Hi, everyone. Welcome to our press workshop, Geoscientists Working Directly with Communities to Provide Local Benefits. Our speakers this afternoon are Raj Pandya, Director of the Thriving Earth Exchange at AGU, John Stoltz, Director of the Center for Environmental Research and Education at Duquesne University. Sorry about that. I should have asked. Carol Liu, Founder and Executive Director of Caribshare Biogas in Montego Bay, Jamaica. Harriet Festing, Director of Flood Forum USA in Chicago, Illinois. And Julie Vano, Project Scientist, Hydrometeorological Applications Program at the National Center for Atmospheric Research in Boulder, Colorado.
Thanks, Nancy. So, hi everyone and welcome. My name is Raj Pandya, and I'm an AGU employee and the director of AGU's Thriving Earth Exchange. We wanted to put together this workshop because we wanted to give you an early heads up about what we think is an emerging trend in Earth and space science, the trend of communities and scientists working together to do and apply science in advance of local priorities. It's interesting because it's growing rapidly. We've seen a huge increase in the number of sessions about this at AGU. We've seen growth in interest from our scientific members of AGU, and we've seen increased interest in working with scientists. We've seen community leaders who are increasingly interested in working with scientists to solve problems in the United States and around the world. The program I'm part of, the Thriving Earth Exchange, connects community leaders and scientists and helps them work together, and it's grown from 3 projects to 90 projects in just the last 3 years. It's not only interesting, it's also important, and I think it's important for 3 interconnected reasons. First, it's a wellspring of innovation. Communities are tackling global issues at a local scale, and they're making things work. They're figuring out how to prevent flooding, how to clean up pollution, how to adapt to climate change. And climate change in particular is one area where this kind of local leadership and this local collaboration with scientists is driving a lot of the action that we're seeing, especially in the United States. It's also interesting because it has profound implications for how we do science. I think it's a sea change for how we think about the connection between science and society. It's an approach to doing science that emphasizes humility, collaboration, not just across disciplines, but across sectors and across cultures. This way of work isn't about distant scientific expertise speaking from the rarefied halls of academia and telling people what they should do. It's about scientists sitting around conference tables and in community forums, contributing their expertise alongside the wisdom and experience that's within every community. Institutions, including AGU and universities, are evolving already to support this new way of working, and they're evolving quickly. And finally, I think it's important because it has the potential to address some long-standing divides. It can help us overcome some of the divisiveness we've seen, especially lately. Instead of arguing about whether climate change is real, mayors, community leaders, and scientists are rolling up their sleeves together to figure out how to make the cities they share more resilient. It also has the potential to overcome long-standing inequities. This way of working invites people, including and maybe especially people who have been previously ignored, marginalized, or locked out, to help set a scientific agenda so that their priorities are addressed. Science, the right to ask and investigate the questions about your world and your experience, should be a human right, and all communities deserve access to that right. So doing science in this way has the potential to live up to that aspiration. So our 4 panelists are going to talk about each of this in more detail. They're going to talk about different aspects of it. They're going to take 3 or 4 minutes to kind of walk you through their own experience, and then we'll open it up for questions from the audience. And even though Nancy already introduced the panelists, I just want to remind you we've got John Stoltz, who's going to speak first, Director for the Center of Environmental Research and Education at Duquesne University, Carol Liu, who's the Founder and Executive Director of Caribshare Biogas in Jamaica, Julie Vano, who's a project scientist in hydrometeorological applications at the National Center for Atmospheric Research, is going to speak last, and Harriet Festing, the Director of Flood Forum USA, is going to speak just before Julie. So, John.
All right, thanks, and thank you for coming. So I'm a geomicrobiologist, and I've been a member of AGU since 1985. I've studied a variety of different topics, including microbial metabolism of toxic metals, including arsenic. But more recently, I've been focusing on the environmental impacts of unconventional oil and gas extraction. As part of the American Geophysical Union's Barnesville, Ohio Thriving Earth Exchange Project, I was teamed up with Jill Hunkler, a local advocate. Jill's been involved with several local projects and founded the Concerned Barnesville Area Residents. There have been over 2,800 unconventional wells, or oil and gas wells, drilled in Ohio over the past decade, with Barnesville having several hundred. They've already experienced a spill which affected the town's main reservoir and a gas well blowout in a pristine watershed. More recently, it was discovered that the treated waste brine that is being used as a de-icer on their roads and is commercially available at hardware stores contains high levels of radioactive radium. So there is a general concern about their watershed and the reservoir. So together, we have begun an effort to educate local residents about water quality, especially in their reservoir and private wells. Our goal is to establish a sustainable environmental quality monitoring system involving the local citizens groups. We started by sampling Captina Creek and Cat's Run, part of the pristine watershed, and we're interested in determining whether or not there were any residual effects from the blowout earlier in the year. Basically, our initial results are encouraging in the fact that we didn't find anything unusual. But thanks to our Thriving Earth Exchange Collaborative in Ohio, my lab also obtained a sample of the de-icer, so we're testing that as well. But more importantly, based on the work I've done in southwestern Pennsylvania, where I've reached out to a number of other communities that have been part of the shale gas revolution, having someone explain water quality testing data has been a critical lead. Oftentimes, people are given water quality test results, but no explanation, or most importantly, whether their water is safe to drink. For Ohio, we hope to inform the residents about what's in their water and what they need to be concerned about.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Carolou. Oops. It's not my company, Caribshire Biogas, which is based in Montego Bay, Jamaica, collects every day over 70 bins of food waste from 8 hotels, which without us would normally go to landfills, worsening our already severe environmental and climate hazard. And for that reason, I started Caribshire. We operate a biodigester plant that turns the food waste into biogas, which is a renewable natural gas and organic fertilizer. We are the first and currently the only organic waste recycling facility in the country. And truly, our mission is to demonstrate our model solution for managing waste sustainably and alleviate climate change in the Caribbean. Certainly, the Caribbean, climate change it's a dire issue for us because we're small island states. But our model shows that here's a way in which we can help. The waste can be used for good, can produce an energy source, which is important for us as we are dependent on imported fossil fuels. And we can have also fertilizer to help for farming sector. We envision a future where every Caribbean country will be using organic waste for good. As a startup, it has been particularly challenging in so many ways. And so we have really sought collaborations. And certainly the reason being here is to advocate for the community science movement and what they have done for Caribshire. Through the Thriving Earth Exchange, Dr. Wally, soil scientist, volunteered his time for 2 weeks with us. He tested and confirmed our fertilizer composition, and he really helped to propel our fertilizer side of the business. He met with several of the farmers that we work with. Franklin Douglas is one of these small farmers, and is hiding here in the photo, but he absolutely loved our fertilizer, and he really appreciated the work that Dr. Wally did with us. Spoke about the fertilizer, but another big component to Caribshire is our biogas production, which is now coming up. We had a a particularly challenging startup with the biological development, which under normal circumstances should take a few months, 3 to 6. It took us 2 years. So we're very pleased to see these wonderful gas puffs. And what it for us means is that we're meeting our next milestone, which is to commission a large-scale generator for a business customer. So we can then show here is waste-to-energy demonstration in Jamaica. And this is certainly another reason for us to have biodigesters being built as part of a whole sustainable management solution, right, and a climate change solution for the region. And with that too, I'm again looking for new collaborations to assist with this, and the community science movement is certainly part of that. Thank you for your time. That's it.
Help. Does anyone know?
Bring it up.
We just have to wait just a little bit, and he'll bring it up.
I'm supposed to do that one, am I? Oh.
Try not.
Okay. I'm Harriet Festing, Executive Director of Anthropocene Alliance and our first initiative, Flood Forum USA. And I want to tell you the story about Helen Lekovich. She's a resident of the village of Midlothian in Illinois. She's a hair stylist, and she runs her business from her home, which is affected by chronic flooding. So in April 2013, she set up the flood advocacy group called Flood Lothian Midlothian. I went down on a day where there'd been fairly mild rain, and this gives you a sense of what flooding looks like on a less severe day of rain. This is State Farm underwater. So she hosts meetings of residents in her garage. They have started documenting and uploading photos and displaying them. They join parades to get attention. And critically, they make sure that they have a lot of fun. That's a good way of getting a following. This meeting was probably the most critical in their move to get action. So with our help, we managed to convene, so the state rep convened state and county agencies, and from that came an $8 million flood control project. They become one of just 5% of communities that have joined the community rating system, just 5% of communities that are part of the National Flood Insurance Program that are now in the community rating system. So that's like the gold star of best practice. And while they were doing that, they influenced state and federal legislation. This is a meeting with Congressman Quigley and Senator Durbin. They've been dealing with a very unsupportive mayor and several trustees, and in 2014, they voted them out. And so they were quoted by the state floodplain manager as one of the communities worst in the state in terms of practices, going to one of the best. So Flood Forum USA on Anthropocene Alliance was really set up, inspired by the work of Helen Lekovich. And the belief that if we're going to get action on climate change and environmental abuse, we need to mobilize, train up those people who are most directly impacted and get them to push for that change. We're currently working with 40 Helen equivalents in 18 US states. And what's been so interesting and pioneering is that we take 20 of the 90 text projects are matched through our program. So half of the 40 have pro bono scientists working with them. And if you don't know, that's a very intensive process. So we meet every month with the scientists, with the Thriving Earth Exchange, the community leader ourselves. These are the many, many Zoom meetings that we have. In addition to the scientists, they also get expert planners, legal advisors, financiers, funders. So we have a mix of partners providing pro bono support. And then they have monthly peer-to-peer meetings where all these leaders are meeting with each other. So lessons learned. The residents have explained to us something that I think scientists know, but have found difficult to deal with, is that there's no clear line between flood risk and no flood risk, or between types of flood risk. It's one big, messy, ever-changing situation to be in. And so scientists are really very dependent on residents to help them understand in more granular detail what's going on and how best to solve it. And then the other thing is that climate change and flooding is as much a political problem as it is an engineering problem. And so we need residents like Helen and like the other leaders to work with scientists, with legislators, with residents, with nonprofits to help push for action. And what we're seeking, as we expand, and we expect to double in group in the number in the next year, is a movement of people pushing for action on climate change.
So you can change up the slides. I'm Julie Vano. I'm a hydrologist at the National Center for Atmospheric Research. My work focuses on how changes in temperature and precipitation influence the amount of water in our rivers and streams. And I work a lot with federal agencies and public utilities to help them navigate what these changes mean to their water supply. And I've become really excited about this. How do scientists connect with the people who use the information and have that conversation to be able to create information that can help inform their decision making? And this is an analogy that was shared with me by David Behar from San Francisco Public Utilities that I think illustrates this partnership quite well. Scientists and decision makers, they're two very different species, yet they coexist in the same ecosystem and over time can develop a symbiotic relationship. And that's really what motivates a lot of my work, is that I think we can make better, more resilient choices through better engagement between scientists and communities. And so through this excitement of getting scientists and decision makers working together to design, conduct, apply, share research in ways that maximizes its value to society. And so at AGU, there's been this grassroots community that's come together. We've tagged ourselves Science to Action, but it's really an umbrella of the different ways that you can interact, where you treat the other, the non-scientists, as an equal partner in the exchange. And our goal is to help communities thrive by increasing science engagement to improve daily life and better confront concerns posed by extreme events, climate and land cover change, and natural hazards. And so this all kind of came together, well, I first kind of became aware of this growing grassroots movement in 2016, where I proposed a session that was all about the process of doing research, not necessarily the results, and the process where you were connecting with the community or the decision maker. And I learned of some other sessions, and we decided to sequence our sessions. And so there was 3 different sessions and 2 networking events. And we had a lot of fun, and a lot of people were interested. So the next year, we decided to do it again. We got 8 sessions, 2 networking events, and we had a lot of fun, a lot of good connections. And so this year, there are 17 sessions, 4 networking events, 6 workshops, and so much more. And so we're kind of expanding beyond what you can put in even on a schedule, which I think is really exciting. And it's been a really inspiring week hearing all of this work going on. And so now I want to share a little bit about what it's meant for me being a part of this community. I've become closer connected with the Water Utility Climate Alliance. It's a group of the 12 of the nation's largest utilities that supply water to over 50 million people throughout the US. Their mission is to collaboratively advance water utility climate change adaptation, seeing climate resilient water utilities and thriving communities is their vision. And so I've become involved, and we've started co-producing many things. One of those is we're working on doing trainings that focus on building resilience to climate change. And I've gotten a chance to be a part of these trainings that they're putting on. So they're talking to their peers and bringing in the science through talking with me and my colleagues at NCAR and at other academic institutions, but it's really kind of this co-producing information that's relevant to water utilities. And if you're interested in talking with my stakeholder, Lorna, and a lot of others, but she is the one who's the head of the Water Utility Climate Alliance, and recommend reaching out if you're interested. So I think kind of concluding, there are many thoughtful, hardworking people who are working on connecting these two communities, and they're growing. They're growing at AGU, but they're growing a lot of other places too. When we came up with the tag Science to Action, we realized there were other efforts that were doing kind of similar things, also having similar names. And so we're kind of, it's amazing like how many people are thinking about how we're moving forward in this direction. And finally, to conclude, I think together we can make better, we can be better prepared for what the future brings. And it's important. There's a lot of little people that are depending on us for that.
Great, thank you. We will now open it up to questions from reporters in the room. Please state your name and affiliation.
Andy Revkin, National Geographic Society, that side, still writing. I guess the National Climate Assessment second part came out recently, and if you look back at most of the coverage, it focused on political debates about what Trump believed or didn't believe, and it focused on the impact side, but it didn't have much of this. And I wondered how you feel that maybe now is there an opportunity for a different kind of story to emerge about how do you put that science to use at the community level?
Sure, I can.
And I'll jump in.
Yeah, I definitely, I mean, I think, so I was in a, there was a report on attribution science that was released on Monday, and I was a part of a chapter that focused on what does it mean, the impacts for water management, and what does it mean for the applications. I think we're trying to make that story more clear, and these are some fantastic examples of ways that people are working forward in that way. And I think, I mean, it personally, like, that's what motivates me, so I hope it motivates others as well.
Yeah, I think that's right. I just emphasize that Richard Moss is leading a group that is really taking a kind of bringing the sort of idea of assessment, but taking it to what people are doing to adapt to climate change. What are the best practices in climate change adaptation? What are the research gaps that could be addressed that would help better inform on-the-ground climate adaptation in the future? And that report, I think, came out in a journal just 2 days ago, if I'm not mistaken, in BAMS. So.
So I'm sorry, I'm severely deaf, and so I'm going to need a quick summary translation of the question. It's better probably if Julie quickly.
If you want to iterate it again, though, it's more specific
No,
to what
I'll hold the microphone closer too. It's at the community level in Illinois. All people would hear is about the divisive politics over climate change, when a big chunk of the report was practical information on how to boost resilience to climate hazards. What's the challenge in getting the second part of the story to be the first part of the story?
So instead of having the divisiveness, this is a story about this is another side of the story that's being shared, and how is that gonna move us forward? I don't.
Sorry, is that a question? How do we shift from divisiveness?
Yes.
How do we shift from divisiveness to... So that's been perhaps one of the most dramatic things that I've seen with the communities that... so several of the communities I work with, the community leaders have been physically removed from town hall meetings as a result of them talking. That was before us working with them. What we bring is credibility and authority. So I think, and that comes in two levels actually, I think just from the fact that they have a national organization called Anthropocene Alliance, and then they hear American Geophysical Union, and that makes them feel backed, but actually I think it's more direct. Just the feeling that they have someone who they can speak to who is a scientist, and they call them our scientist, has really transformed the confidence of the people and therefore the willingness of both the city to engage in someone who seems more credible and the confidence of the advocate to then work with them. So we've seen several shift from very, very antagonistic relationships to now working with their cities, but not always, and for very good reasons. You know, sometimes they have to keep staying outside and pushing.
I'm only using the microphone over there right here. I think that there is a greater degree to which, I'm Julia Kamari-Drapkin. I'm the founder of IC Change. So we are a citizen-sourced story and citizen science platform for communities to contribute their stories about the climate impacts as well as contribute data to be able to give it empirical grounding so that we can connect to the bigger picture climate trends. We work with the Thriving Earth Exchange. We work with Harriet, we work with Julie. But in terms of the National Climate Assessment particularly, you know, we've been talking to Richard Moss, who's really pushing this forward. And I don't think it's just the report or whether or not residents are reading it. I think a lot of it has to do with us as journalists. Most of my colleagues didn't read the report, they read the summary, and they focused on the news peg when the bulk of the community is starting to move past attribution. Like, when is it not climate change at this point in the game? And it's really on us.
Harvey Lyford, freelance. I recognize that this is a workshop and not a device for presenting news, but still I was thinking, what would the lead of a story be if I were to write it? And it seems to be that, in your collective opinion, it's a recent thing that scientists and community leaders realize they should talk to each other, and I can't believe that that is true. I would hope you could just explain a little bit what is new here, in the broader sense, not your individual projects, but the concept of working together.
From my point of view, what's new is that it's starting to emerge as a priority for scientific institutions and for scientific societies to do this kind of work and to see that this kind of work is supported, encouraged, facilitated, and rewarded.
And I would maybe add, like, as somebody who is relatively starting my career, like, in some ways I feel like I'm taking a risk by going and saying I'm going to connect with communities and I'm going to focus a lot of my resources on that. And the fact that I can take that risk is, I think, speaks of kind of the momentum here.
I would say two things. The groups I'm working with, they feel the pressure of climate change. Many of them are homeless themselves. They're living in FEMA trailers. They're extremely angry. I mean, I'm feeling this. 2019 has brought this level of anger and awareness and desire to do something and real push to work together. And we could not be where we are now, and I think we're at quite an exciting time. We could not be here without Thriving Earth Exchange. So we have the mechanism to match scientists and communities, and that's very exciting. And they have told me again and again that it is the scientists that is really what's giving them. It's the game changer for them.
Are there any other questions from the reporters in the room? Any questions on the chat? Okay, great. That concludes our press workshop. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.